Hi, welcome to Talk Connected. I'm Virginia Murray. I'm a licensed professional counselor. And Talk Connected is really just a space for listeners to come and really connect into real life situations, real life challenges, moments, experiences. And we're really here to inform, educate, and hopefully just inspire a new sense of well being emotionally and mentally. So, today's topic, we're going to talk about forgiveness or even unforgiveness and how it affects you, the complexities of it, how to navigate it, how to identify what you need. There is a lot that goes into forgiveness. Forgiveness is and can be a journey for a lot of people. So if you've really been struggling with forgiveness, if you've been thinking about starting a healing journey, I think that this is a great place for you to kind of like really start and think about things. So before we get into it, I always like to tell people take a second just to check in on yourself, right? And what does that mean to check in on myself? It means how am I feeling right now? And I'm going to take that feeling and I'm going to acknowledge it and validate it. And then I'm going to do something for me that may help me to decompress from it, right? Or even schedule something for me to whereas I can actually deal with this emotion or feeling. So whether you're feeling exhausted, tired, disconnected, numb, you may be having a good day. Today may be a good day for you, or today just may be a regular day and you're just like, nothing's going on. Like, I feel okay. But if you are, feeling exhausted, tired, or any type of feeling where it's just kind of, not you, take a moment to acknowledge that and validate that. And then ask yourself, what is it that I need that's going to help me through these feelings? What is it that I need that I can kind of decompress from feeling this way? And we know that it's not like a quick fix, right? So it takes more than a check in to really alleviate yourself of some of the feelings. So with the check in, we're talking about just navigating everyday life and just taking moments for yourself to give you things to help pour inside of you and pour back into you. Right. So if you're feeling tired or exhausted, do you need to go to the gym? Do you need to schedule a spa day? Do you just need to take a warm bubble bath or shower playing your favorite playlist? Do you need to sit back on your couch or in your bed, grab a good book and just have a cup of tea or coffee? Sometimes we just need to prioritize ourselves. I so often give the analogy of a stove, right? We spend a lot of time handling priorities and responsibilities in our lives. And sometimes we just forget to check in on ourselves. We check in on so many people, but who is checking in on you? It's that saying right there. Who is checking in on you? And if you have people checking in on you, wonderful and great. But if you don't have anyone checking on you, or if you do, it is always good to check in on yourself. So speaking of priorities, right? We have a stove. How many of us can imagine just a stove in our mind? It has four burners, right? Two burners in the back, two burners on the front. So the back burner is a place where a lot of us just put things on simmer. We're going to keep a watchful eye on it. The front burners, how many of us know when we are cooking something, one of those front two burners is our favorite, right? It's convenient. It's right there. We can get to it. It's where we have things on higher heat, right? Where we have got to pay attention to it and watch it. You should always be on one of those front burners. You should always be a top and high priority. So if you have something else as a high priority, you should always also be a high priority. Something that you're always watchful over, something that you're always, close to you, something that you can be consistent with. So often in life, though, we put ourselves on the back burner. And we're just like, am I okay? All right, I see myself. Like, I'm all right. I'm back there simmering, but I really got to pay attention to these two things right here. But if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't pour into yourself, if you don't make yourself a priority, you will experience burnout, right? And then you're not going to be able to take care of yourself. You're not going to have the energy to pour into things, and we will be exhausted and feel disconnected or numb or like we're just on airplane mode, we're just, going, So it's very important that you check in on yourself daily, sometimes 2 times a day, because we can feel one way in the beginning of the day and then another way towards the end of the day or midday. So it's important to validate and acknowledge how you're feeling and then ask yourself, what is it that I need? And then try your best to make space and time to actually give yourself those things, to make sure you're giving yourself what you need. So, if you need to pause the podcast and check in on yourself, please take a moment to do so. Outside of that, we are going to continue and we're going to talk about and we're going to jump into forgiveness. Now, working with many people, forgiveness can mean many different things. It can mean many different things. You ever heard the saying where two people may be dealing with the same thing, but they need different things to navigate it? Forgiveness can be so intricate and so complex because there's a lot of layers to it. It's not like this one size fits all, right? So, what in my experience, forgiveness oftentimes is when someone is experiencing an offense from someone, or maybe they are the offender, but if they're experiencing an offense from someone, it has left them hurt. It has left them discouraged. It has left them disappointed, right? And what the journey of forgiveness does is it takes you through this healing process because forgiveness coincides with healing. Forgiveness takes you through this healing process to alleviate the burden and the heaviness that you may feel from unforgiveness in your life, right? Also, a great place, to look things up as it is 2025 going into 2026. The internet is a great tool to use, if you are just like, well, I don't know what forgiveness means to me. I had, took the liberty to look up what forgiveness means on the internet, right? And it means the act of consciously deciding to let go of feelings of resentment, anger, or the desire for revenge towards someone who has caused harm, even if that person does not deserve it or asked for it, right? In simpler terms, forgiveness is choosing peace over hurt. Forgiveness is choosing, to do self-work to get out of the bondage of brokenness. Forgiveness is just choosing to free yourself of something that has been a heaviness on the inside of you, something that you have internalized or been carrying on your journey of life, right? How many of us have ever had a backpack on our backs? And it may not have had the heaviest of things in it, just may have been a regular backpack on our backs. And we went somewhere and we're carrying this backpack on. The longer that you walk and the longer that you journey with that backpack on, the heavier it gets, right? Sometimes, you might have left the house or left wherever you were, the place that you were, and you're on the journey of life, just carrying your mental and emotional backpack. But all of a sudden, after a while, you're just like, oh, my back hurts. Like, my shoulders are starting to hurt. The backpack is starting to get heavy. It's starting to get heavy because number one, as we continue to journey with the backpack on, we just start to feel the weight of it more. But number two, if you are navigating life like the rest of us, right? Like you have experiences in life, whether good or bad, challenging, just real life experiences to where there will be things along the way that you put in your backpack and it will get heavier and heavier and heavier. But I ask you, what is in your backpack that doesn't belong in there? What is in your backpack that you don't have to carry? Is it forgiveness or unforgiveness that needs to be extended to yourself or other people? A lot of times people think that if I forgive someone, I release the power that I have in the situation. If I forgive someone, it means that I have to let it go. No. A big part of forgiveness means that it doesn't mean that you're forgetting or excusing or condoning the offense or the behavior that someone did to hurt you. It also does not mean that if you so choose to forgive someone, that they get access back into your life and to you. No, it doesn't. How many of us have heard the saying, forgiveness is not for the other person, it's for you? That's so true. It's so true because a person can hurt you and you are left with the actual hurt and repercussions. You are left to be the one that has to go through your healing journey. That's why forgiveness is not for them. Someone may offend you and go on with living their lives. Now, here you are to pick up the pieces. And in order to pick up the pieces and to heal the bondage of the brokenness that you're in, you have to learn how to forgive. Now, there are certain situations and certain things that are a little bit more complex than this, and we will get into those things later on, right? We'll get into those things later on. But a lot of times when working with forgiveness, one of the biggest pieces, that a lot of people say, whether I'm out doing a speaking engagement, a workshop, whether I'm one-on-one or doing group counseling, one of the questions that come up so oftentimes is, where do I start? And that usually goes hand in hand with the saying, I feel stuck. So where do you start? When you decide to start therapy, or you decide to go on a forgiveness journey, or you decide to go on a healing journey, because remember, the two coincide with each other, where do I start? There are 4 different steps: identify, understand, create a plan, which is finding your resolution, and to execute. And we will go through these 4 steps. Like, let's just dive right in, right? So, identifying. Identifying is your surface level step, right? I need to identify what I need to extend forgiveness for, or even who, right? It is identifying the issue. It's one of the most easiest steps in forgiveness because a lot of the times we know when someone hurts us. We know when we may have hurt someone else, So we can identify what needs forgiveness, and what it is that the challenge actually is, right? So then we have to go to understanding. Step number 2, understanding. How has it affected myself or others? That is more of a complex step. And I know it may seem uncomplex, right? Because it's just like, understanding. Everybody thinks they're a very understanding person until they have to put the work in to actually understand what understanding actually means. I will break it down in another analogy. I love my analogies. Hopefully they'll be useful to you as well, because I think that analogies just gives a bit of a visual. A lot of people are visual people, but also in analogies, it gives you like thinking, right? You can actually think about it, or you can try your best to visualize it. So in analogies, right? When we talk about the first step, which is identifying the issue, it's surface level. If you think of a tree, right? Think about a tree, just any tree. We have the branches and the leaves, right? I typically tell people to imagine that these are the seasons of your life, right? If you're going through a fall winter season of your life, you may look at someone and be like, hey, is everything okay? Like, you just see it on someone, right? The leaves are falling off, the branches are barren, right? But if someone is going through a spring, summertime in their lives, it's almost just like it's fruit bearing. It's the leaves are green and luscious, and there's maybe flowers blooming, right? Like, it's just the things that you can see. So I can identify by looking at the issue if it's a, not so good time in your life or a good time in your life. And sometimes a good time in your life is somebody looks at you and they just say, you're just glowing. You're really glowing. Like, you look great. And I'm pretty sure we've all experienced either somebody saying, hey, like, is everything okay? Or, hey, you're glowing and you look great. So identifying the issue, that's what I mean by surface level. It's just there. It's visible. And not everyone's, issues are visible. Some people have up defenses, which is another thing in the forgiveness that we will go over, as we continue to talk. And then we go down to the tree, right? And there is the core of the tree, right? The tree trunk. That right there, I tell people, can be your morals, your values, your characteristics, just who you are standing firm and tall in, just as a person. Just who you are. And a lot of times these are the things that are ingrained in us, right? Our values and morals, they're ingrained in us. And every so often, like depending on our experiences in life, like it can shift a bit. We can change, but these are kind of like the core of who we are, and it really stands firm and tall in our lives, right? Now, understanding how it has affected self or others speaks on the one thing that is not on the surface level, the thing on a tree that you cannot see, the thing that can bring it life or, cause it a little bit of, decay or destruction. And what are those things? The roots. The roots of a tree, if you have ever seen, whether in a book or on TV, or just anywhere in real life, the roots of a tree are so intricate, right? Sometimes they don't just go straight down. They can go this way and loop-de-loop and go over here, and they can wrap around other, roots underneath. So understanding is going to take work. It's not just your surface level, what I can see understanding. But when you have something like forgiveness and unforgiveness and dealing with the offenses of people or the offenses that you have done, it takes work. And to get to the roots of a tree, right, you got to get a shovel. You got to put some work in. You have got to start digging to see and understand what is at the root of the situation at hand, which is why so oftentimes therapy and counseling, they throw out the other side of, a lot of clinicians talk about self-care. And not just the self-care that everybody's throwing out like nowadays, right? Just take care of yourself, self-care this, self-care that, self-care. No, number one, self-care has to be intentional when it coincides with the working of self, especially in the process of healing. It has to be intentional, right? It has to be something that decompresses, something that alleviates. Self-care is not supposed to be a chore. If you are going from working on self and really digging to get to the roots of things, there is no way that you got to say, oh, I got to go do this today for self-care. And I really don't want to do it. Self-care should not feel like a chore. If self-care feels like a chore, you need to shift your self-care and say, what is it in this season and time of my life that is going to pour into me or decompress me? Because you are working so hard on self in your healing journey, you have to be intentional with taking care of yourself. They go hand in hand. If you are digging, and you are working emotionally and mentally, it takes a toll, right? That's why there has to be a readiness in therapy, and you can get to a place of readiness if you don't feel ready. That's something that you can navigate with a counselor or a therapist, right? But if you are working on yourself and you're putting in all this work, there is no way that you cannot pour back into yourself the energy that you are pouring out and still think that you can be consistent in your journey of healing. So if self-care feels like a chore for you, I encourage you to really look at yourself and say, is there something else that I should be doing that's going to actually pour into me and actually make me feel good about myself or my life right now, right? So identifying and then understanding. And understanding is where you really have to start digging and putting the work in. The next step is creating a plan or finding a resolution, right? So creating a plan is really just kind of like saying, now that I've identified, now that I understand the complexities of the situation and what I may need to do, now I have to create a plan to be able to do so. And creating a plan is a beautiful thing, right? But how many of us have ever created a plan and then it just sat there? And we never do it. And we were so aware of everything that we needed to do, but we were just stuck at that stage and we did not do it. I will use this as an example. Again, it is 2025 going into 2026, right? So, the one thing that everyone is kind of bringing up right now is New Year resolutions, the change that they want to see in the upcoming new year to come, right? So, let's just say you have a New Year resolution. What do a lot of people tend to do? January 1st, or that first week of January, I'm going to start that new thing and I'm going to be successful with it, right? I'm going to implement that change. There is nothing wrong with implementing a change in your life, right? But when we make a plan, the next step, right, is the execution and how we actually execute it for success, which is our fourth step in where do I start? So identifying, understanding, creating a plan, and execution. Now, let's take the New Year resolution that has been the most popular that I have run into. The New Year resolution that in the past I have given myself, right? I'm pretty sure a lot of you know what that is. That one would be I'm going to start going to the gym. Right? So it's a lot of people have the resolution, which are why the gyms are packed, during the month of January. They say the first week of January, I'm going to be in the gym. That is my New Year resolution to get healthy, take care of myself, lose weight, whatever it is that you so want to do to be healthy. But what happens at week 4 and week 6 and 8 and 12 and maybe even up to 16? You kind of see the numbers and the crowdedness in the gym kind of go down. And then people are saying, oh, well, I'm going to start back Sunday next week. Or I'm going to start back on the first of the next month. And then that comes and there's no follow through, right? And then you find yourself at the next year and you're just like, okay, new year this year, this is my year, right? How many of us have heard that? This is my year. And then it's not our year. And then we wait until next year, right? Well, that's because we have identified what we want to do, right? Maybe we wanted to lose weight. Maybe we wanted to just be healthier, build up stamina. We have understood why we needed to do it, maybe for health reasons, or maybe it's just because we want to feel a certain way. We want to feel good about ourselves. We have created a plan, which is sign up to the gym, go get a membership, but our execution, was not successful. And why is it that sometimes our execution is not successful? Well, because when you have a plan, it is very important to prepare and equip yourself with what you need to have a successful outcome, right? So if I say that I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to lose 15 pounds and I'm going to start my journey of healthy, and then I start the first week of January and I'm starting out good, but then, I'm still eating what I want to eat over here. And then, but I'm going to the gym and I'm not realizing any changes. And then life happens and gets in the way. And then I can't go to the gym anymore and I fall off, or maybe I lose motivation, right? And I'm not executing to get to my goal of healthy. How I put it to people is, we'll take the example of swimming. If you have a New Year resolution to learn how to swim, there is no way the first week of January you're going to sign up for that membership and jump in 10 feet of water without knowing how to swim. The lifeguards are going to jump in. Whoever's there is probably going to jump in to try to help you. You cannot go from setting the goal and just jumping in to execution and just doing whatever it is that you want to set out to do. That is why a lot of times, we have recurring failure, because what have we done to equip ourselves and prepare ourselves so that when January 1st gets here, we have set the foundation, a healthy foundation, in order to be more successful at execution. So if you have a New Year resolution, this is October. It's this the intel of October going into November. Take these weeks to do what you can to equip yourself and prepare yourself. So when the first week of January gets here, you have laid a foundation and you know how to continue to be consistent to execute to success. Now going back to forgiveness, how does that tie into forgiveness? So I have identified the issue. I've identified what needs forgiveness, who is connected to the forgiveness, right? I have understood how the forgiveness is so complex and how it affects me and maybe other people in my life, how it triggers me, how, it's a heavy burden for me, how I've been carrying it. The next thing is I've created a plan, how I want to navigate my journey of forgiveness, what I need, the tools that I need, whether that be therapy, whether that be, to how to process my forgiveness, whether that maybe I need to connect to the other person or, whatever your plan may be to find resolution. And then the last step is execution. You have gone through all the steps, you have built yourself up to a space where you have equipped yourself to start setting the tone and start getting to a healthier space and a healthier well-being with inside of you, taking things out the backpack that you don't have to carry, or that are unnecessary for your life, to alleviate you of those things, right? So now forgiveness of self and forgiveness of others, it can take a little while. There are some people who are in this journey, right? Depending on the offense that was done to them or other people, depending on the offense, it can be, shorter term. I've seen people go through journeys of forgiveness that have lasted for 6 months, but I've also seen people go on journeys of forgiveness that have lasted for, a year or 2 years, in all honesty, because it depends on the layers of forgiveness. And sometimes as you're working on forgiveness, you start to realize that it leads you to other doors and other avenues and other things that need to be worked on. Everybody, when they're talking about a journey of healing, not everybody, but a lot of people, when they're talking about journeys of forgiveness, they just talk about, oh, it was so beautiful and I feel so free and I feel so great. It was a very freeing experience. But a lot of people don't talk about navigating the darkness and the tunnel, falling here and having to get back up and, seeing this connected to this over here. Now I have to deal with that and feeling stuck at this point and figuring out how to get back out of that stuck point to get to the light at the end of the tunnel or the freedom, that everyone or many people really talk about. So forgiveness for a lot of people can be short term or it can be long term, depending upon the offense, depending upon all the components of your forgiveness journey. And that's why we said in the beginning of, this episode that forgiveness, it can be, for some people it's forgiveness, but for some people they may not have to navigate it this way and some people may have to navigate it that way. Same thing, two different journeys, two different paths, because our lives are so different. So also, in leading into forgiveness, how many of us have been in a situation where we've needed forgiveness from someone or someone have needed forgiveness from us? And out of frustration or out of whatever it may have been, you just kind of said, well, we're not getting anywhere with this. So let's just put it to the side and just let's move on with our lives. I forgive you. Let's just move on because we're not getting anywhere with this. But then 6 weeks later, 6 months later, a year later, there's more conflict and arguments, and that thing from 6 weeks, 6 months, or a year ago that you decided to move past, all of a sudden it finds its way in present time conflict. And the two of you are just like, well, what does this have to do with what we're dealing with now? It has nothing to do with the situation in the present. Well, that's because there was never resolution found in that thing that you just pushed aside. And here's that word that we talked about in the beginning, Avoidance. Avoidance is an unhealthy defense mechanism, that people or some people put in place to just kind of like move on from a situation because it makes them feel uncomfortable, makes them feel uneasy, right? But when we place avoidance in a situation, that out of sight, out of mind aspect, let's just move on. I forgive you. We're continuing this journey. That thing just keeps cycling around. There's just a pattern of it cycling around every time you have a conflict, or you may see something on TV that may trigger you, or you may, hear something that may trigger you. Someone else may be going through the same experience, and that thing just keeps coming up, and it's just a thorn in the relationship dynamic that you're in. And when we say relationship dynamic, right, it may be friendship, it may be parent and child, it may be relational, intimate, partnership, it could be any of those. But that thing that keeps cycling around will constantly be a thorn of conflict until you actually find true forgiveness, healing, and resolution in it, right? When you are seeking forgiveness in someone else, so oftentimes I tell people you have no control over whether they choose to accept it or reject it. And some people can even say they accept it, but that thorn keeps popping up and you realize they have, rejected the forgiveness. Have you really truly forgiven me? Because why is this issue still constantly coming up? We have no control over if someone chooses to accept or reject our forgiveness. But sometimes when they reject it, we're kind of just like pouring out and pouring out. And we ask that question, what do you need from me? What else can I do? What else can I do? Or someone asks you that question. And either you have said or the other person have said, I don't know, but you need to do something because I'm still feeling this way. This thing is still bothering us. It's still coming up. I don't know. That is an indicator that that person or yourself, whoever was the person to say, I don't know what I need, but I know I need something to get past this or put this down. That is an indicator that self-work is needed, either in that person or yourself. Because if they don't know or you don't know what you need from the other person, how can you, find the resolution or acceptance in your own heart to be able to put it down? If they don't know or you don't know what you need from that other person, then the situation is at a standstill. And that is why a lot of people say, I feel stuck because I don't know what the situation needs. I don't know what I need. Well, then you need to go on a journey of healing or self-work to figure out what it is that is needed to try to, find progress in this situation. So a lot of times we have no control over if someone chooses to accept or reject our apology or our forgiveness. And a lot of people, what you do is you spend a lot of energy trying to figure out how to get the person to accept it, how to get this conflict passed. But you are pouring energy into something that you cannot control, something that you are not accountable for, right? And what I like to say here is I tell people to imagine if someone offends you, right? And they're holding this package of offense. The offense is symbolism of the package. And this person is holding this package and they set it down in front of you because they have offended you and they have walked away and moved on with their lives. Now, what do many people tend to do? Pick the package up and say, hey, you need to be accountable for this. This is what you have done to me. And we're going after that person. That person's still going on with their life, right? So what I tell people is that package is not yours to carry. It is not yours to pick up. We can express and tell someone what they have done to us without picking up their accountability of the offense and trying to get them to understand. That's not yours to pick up and that's not yours to carry. We have to be and come to a place in our healing process and our healing journeys where when we have done our part, And we have expressed it to someone maybe over and over and over again, not to pick up what they have done to us and actually pour energy into our healing process. Now, I get it, right? It's unfair. It's unfair when someone has hurt us, or someone has done something, or someone has disappointed us in some way. We are left to pick the pieces up. And there are some things, right? And this gets into the complexities of forgiveness and unforgiveness. There are some things where people will look at you, and I've come across this where working with people, I've come across where some people look at me and they say, what do I do when I feel like what someone has done to me is an unforgivable offense? Where it may have been so vile or cruel that it's just unforgivable. And I look at that person, or if I'm talking to that person, I ask them this question. No matter how vile, no matter how deep, no matter how difficult that offense was, who's carrying the weight of it? It's you. You are carrying the weight of the offense that someone has done to you, which is why that saying says, forgiveness is not for the other person, it's for you. Because we have no control over what someone so chooses to do to us and how someone so chooses to hurt us if they have access to us. And we may have never thought that that person would have done that to us. But once the offense is done, it cannot be undone. And it is hurting you. That's where it's very complex to really get into the intricacies of understanding forgiveness when someone has done something and you feel it is just unforgivable. That's why forgiveness is for you to heal. Forgiveness is for you to heal from the offenses that people have done to you. It is for you to take it out of your backpack and not carry it around in life, because if we are carrying something around in life that someone has done to us and they have just gone, and we have no intention of ever talking to them again in our lifetime because of the type of offense that they may have done. We may never talk to this person again, never give them access, never speak to them, never have any contact, but it sits with us, the offense that they did. And sometimes it overflows to different avenues and aspects of our lives. It impacts our relationships with other people. It impacts us internally, maybe now struggling with depression or anxiety or paranoia or PTSD. Now, if I see something on TV, I'm triggered, right? And now I have to deal with that. That is why it is so important to exercise forgiveness in your life, for you not to carry that burden anymore. I speak it on this. If someone comes into your life, right, and they cut you, now you have a cut, let's just say on your arm, and they walk away, they may be resentful, they may feel guilty. But after that person walks away or goes about their life or the next day for themselves, they walk away clear and free. They don't have a cut or a wound or a scar on them. You now have to tend to the wound of something that someone else did to you. You have to clean it up and bandage it. And yes, we have support in our lives, but we're talking about our healing from forgiveness that people have done. We have to take the steps to clean it and tend to it and care for it. And guess what? Even when that wound has healed and has closed up, there may always be a scar there to remind you of what was done to you or what someone else did to you. But when you go on your journey of forgiveness and healing, when you look at that scar, it's not going to affect you how it once affected you in life. It's not going to tear you apart how it once tore you apart what someone did to you before. That is why we do have to go through forgiveness, even sometimes with unforgivable offenses, right? And this right here is not going to really zone in or dig, but I'm hoping that what I'm saying can be relatable and just touch your heart to shift it in the way that it needs to be shifted, to understand we may not cannot do anything to take away what someone did to us, but we can get in a healthier position in order to help ourselves navigate our own lives just a little bit better, that it's not impacting things or relationships or people around us, that it's not impacting us anymore, that when I think about that one thing or when I look at that one scar, it doesn't bother me the way that it used to bother me, and this just speaks on the complexities of healing and what we may have to continually do in our lives. There's so much more that goes through it. If this is touching your heart, if you feel like it's bringing something up for you, I encourage you to, number one, do that check-in that we talked about in the beginning. Number two, find something to do for you to decompress. But number three, reach out to someone. Reach out to someone. I tell people all the time, when I'm talking to my clients or, when I'm at some kind of speaking engagement or event, I tell people all the time, having someone to reach out to for support is so important. I can speak for myself when I say my heart is just so vested into the people that I work with and the field that I am. My heart is in it. And I tell people, you don't have to go through this alone. You don't have to go through it alone. I will support you to the best of my ability through whatever it is that you're going through whatever it is that you need. And that's the beauty of seeking help, whether it be through a counselor, a therapist, psychologist, whether it be through, maybe you're not ready to start your therapy journey, but have a family member, a friend, have someone that you know, that you know, that you know, that is going to be there for you, and that they have the capacity to help support you, because that's important. Making sure someone has the capacity to support you, right? But it's also important to know that sometimes our family and friends can get us to a certain extent, but to know that starting that journey of therapy or counseling may be the best thing, even if you don't feel ready. So sometimes I will encourage people, go have a session or two, see how it feels to you. Talk about unreadiness to your therapist or your counselor. Talk about unreadiness and talk about how you can get to, maybe you guys can have a couple of sessions of navigating what it means to get to readiness, so that you're not carrying the heaviness of the offense of others in your life, because it is a burden and it's something that you don't have to and you shouldn't have to carry. That's not yours to carry. And it really hinders you and stops you from really being purpose driven to whatever it is that you need to accomplish in your life. We've got to heal. We've got to overcome from things, right? One tool that I find very useful and helpful, that a lot of people have even stated have been very useful and helpful in their journeys of forgiveness, is there's this reflection task that I love to give. So whether or not you're doing it in a notebook, so get you a notebook, a pen and paper, or if you're writing in the note section of your phone, or such as, a laptop, you're pulling a document up on your laptop. You want to create two lists on the paper or, the document on your device, two lists. Now, the first reflection is going to say, this is what I want to forgive myself or what I have forgiven myself for. So this is what I want to forgive myself for, or what I have forgiven myself for. Now, the other side is going to say, this is what I want to forgive others for, or what I have forgiven others for. So this is what I want to forgive others for, or what I have forgiven others for. And you're going to create bullet pointed marks on those lists of everything that you either have forgiven yourself for or you have not. Now, why would you put on the list things that you feel like you have forgiven self or others for? Well, because when you take this list to someone, such as a support system like a counselor, and they help you navigate and really explore it, you may find that you thought that you forgave yourself or others for something, and you really have not. Or you have just partially, but then you may have gotten stuck and there was so much more that you had to, really take a look at and find resolution in. Because avoidance, right? Sometimes we'll get to a point in forgiveness and we'll get frustrated and say, "Oh, we can't make it past this point. Let's just move on from it." Right? So you may find that there are things and doors that need to be reopened for you to continually find a way to navigate certain experiences that you've had in your life. Right. And what's an example, right? So if we look at the list of things I have or that I want to forgive myself for, I use the example of if you have anxiety or you suffer from self-criticism and self-doubt, and you've been doing it to yourself for a long time, that negative self-talk inside of you, right? Such as, oh, you can't do that. You're not worthy of that. You don't deserve that. Why would you even try that? And these are thoughts that you're having in your own head towards things you want to do. Why would you even try that? You'll never accomplish that. You can't do that. They don't love you. You know, these are cognitive distortions, and we need to really apply cognitive reframing and refocusing. Now those are all big words for cognitive distortions can be a form of things that are kind of negative thoughts that twist perception in our mind and make us believe something that it's really not, right? And cognitive refocusing and reframing takes that negative self talk, takes that negative thing, and it shifts it into a more positive, healthy way of thinking or speaking to ourselves. So we go from negative self talk with the distortion of our perceptions to a more positive self talk with pouring positive things in ourselves that creates, more of a reality of rational thinking and thought processing and how we see things. Right? So we can go from, you're not worthy, you're not good at that, to taking that thought and say, well, why do I not feel worthy? And why do I feel like I'm not good at that? Where does that come from? Here's the work of self work and getting the understanding and getting that shovel and digging and taking care of ourselves, right? Understanding where that thought comes from. And maybe hypothetically, we'll say, maybe I didn't accomplish that thing because I didn't have the motivation or the initiative back then. And telling yourself, now it's something different. I've created a blueprint, I've created a plan, and I've actually started to execute in a way that's going to lead to a successful outcome. So I will accomplish that this time. So you take the thought, you acknowledge it, validate it, understand where it came from, and you shift it into more of a positive thought, and you pour something healthy into yourself. I will accomplish this, right? And the cognitive part and the clinical part, there's more that goes into it, which is why I encourage you to speak to a counselor or therapist. But that's kind of just like a blanketed version that shows you the shift from negative to positive. And maybe that's an example of something you want to learn to forgive yourself for, being hard on yourself, criticizing yourself, because that's not me anymore. I now have a vision and a blueprint of my life that I want to execute. Right? Speaking of blueprints, right? Here's another example. So, an example of that is kind of like an architect, right? When we look at the blueprint of forgiveness that we've learned about in this episode, which is the identifying, excuse me, identifying, understanding, creating a plan and finding a resolution, and execution, right? When we look at those four things in the blueprint of that, it makes me think of an architect, because what an architect does is they have a vision of something, a seed that's planted in their mind of a structure or a building of some sort, or whatever the case may be. And then from that vision, they take it and they put it on paper, or, going into 2026, it's very much so AI. Sometimes they use devices and they will do it electronically. And the vision in their head, they created on a device or on that paper, whereas they can see it and other people can see their vision. And then from the vision that can be seen, they say, what tools are we going to need to execute this? And they gather their tools and they prepare themselves, the tools and the equipment, right, that are needed to be a part of this project. And all the connectivity and the collaborations and the people that they're going to need along this journey to make whatever they have had as a seed in their head and a vision that they have now put out actually come into fruition, right? And so when they equip and prepare themselves and they get everything that they need and they can see the plans and other people can see the plans, they start to execute the foundation of it. Because if we have, the foundation is very important. If we have a shaky, non-stable foundation, everything that you build upon it is going to be wavering. Everything that you build upon it is going to be unstable. But if you can take your vision and your plan and you can build a solid, stable foundation, from that foundation, everything that you build upon will be successful and healthy, right? So tying that example into your journey of healing and forgiveness, when you have your steps to identify, to understand, to create, and to execute, to identify starts in the mind, right? We start thinking, well, what is it that I need to heal from or that I need forgiveness, to or from? And then we understand it. We put the work into understanding, and that is preparing, getting all the tools that you need, creating a plan. Now, what am I going to do with these tools? Here's the vision here, and I've put it out. Here's my plan. Now I'm going to get support, and collaborate with support to help me look at what I've put out from the vision or the plan that I now have. And then this support and me, we're going to take all the tools and we are going to start building a healthy mental and emotional foundation for our well-being. And from that, we're going to start building on it, right? Right? It's almost like that new me, who this? All right. So whatever was old, whatever was heavy in our lives, the old version of us, sometimes we have to demolish and then we have to build upon us a new sense of self, emotional, mental well-being. And like we just have this beautiful version of us that comes out just from the vision that was in our head that we could put out for other people to see and connect with and use as support and build up upon ourselves. So I would love, love, love for you guys to take that reflection tool that I gave you, take the 4 steps that I gave you, take the check-ins, and to take all that and just reflect upon it and think about it. Is there healing that you feel like you need to undergo within your life? Is there change? Is there forgiveness of self or to other people? Have you learned that it's not inside of my control and I'm putting all this energy into someone rejecting my forgiveness? And I'm trying to figure out what to do, rather than putting my energy into my own healing and how I can continue to accept things within my own life and take steps for what I need. Just remember that forgiveness is complex. It has self and others and feelings, emotions, thoughts. It's a journey. You need tools. It's a lot, it's a lot. So I hope that you have truly gotten something out of this podcast. Let's continue to build a connection with these real life circumstances, real life experiences. Hopefully we're building on education and informing and truly inspiring people, to take the journeys that they need in their own, emotional and mental well-being. So again, my name is Virginia Murray. I am a licensed counselor. I hope that you all have a beautiful, beautiful day today. Don't forget to check in on yourselves.